Devlog 5. Let's get right into it and not waste any time. In the previous devlog, I showed off the new and main mechanic of my 3D platformer, and that was of course Goobi's newspaper launcher. Now looking back on that devlog, I really didn't explain things that well when it came to my mechanic, and I kept seeing questions pop up, so I'm going to answer those later on in the video. But let's move on to some fun stuff. In Devlog 4, I showed off the concept art that I commissioned Aaron to do for me. I ended up modeling him up and LERP animated him. Now take a look at him, look at his little backpack and all the little details. I really do like this model. Now I'm going to say this over and over again, so get used to it, but I'm very keen on small details, like the backpack flowing in the wind, and his little hat bouncing when he runs. It's little details like that that are very crucial to a character to make them feel believable and that they actually have emotion. I know what you're all going to be saying, but Rigby, isn't Goobi a robot, therefore he should have no emotion? I know that, but I feel like giving him this little personality makes him so much more cuter and more lovable than before. The last model really didn't have that personality that I was going for, but with this new model and these new animations, I feel like LERP and I struck gold with it. I really hope you guys do like this amount of character that I put into this little dude, because I'm really excited to see where he goes. Now I'm going to dive a little bit closer into the actual model itself, because I really do feel like it's better in a couple of ways. The old model really wasn't optimized in the best way. It had too many materials, and it was extremely dense for no reason at all. However, the new model that I made, I took into account polygons, density, materials, all that sort of stuff. This new model has fewer materials and about the same polygons, but it's still maintaining the same amount of detail, if not more. So yeah, this is the final model, and I'm really excited to start throwing them into some environments. Now some things have changed with the animations, and I've asked LERP to improve the running and the jumping mostly, because I feel like those could just use a little bit more oomph. And he really did pull through with that. The new running and jumping animations hold so much more weight than the previous version. Now another thing I've improved was the gliding movement. When the player used to hit the glide button, the character mesh wouldn't rotate whichever way the player was turning, so it felt very stiff. Now the player mesh will rotate whichever way the character is turning. This is nothing more than visual eye candy, but it does help sell the illusion that he's actually turning. Another thing I also added was I made the gliding movement feel a little bit more floaty. Now I know some of you are probably scared to hear the word floaty in a 3D platformer.
I've got my eye on you, Jake Quellen.
However, I feel that the way that I'm implementing it feels a lot better than the way I had it before. So right now, I'd say that the main movement is starting to feel really solid. The movement was something that I've stated before in previous devlogs, is something that I really want to get right before I move on to anything else. Now, I'd like to remind everybody that the player controller is nowhere near complete. However, with each passing devlog that goes by, Goobi's player controller becomes more and more refined and polished. Speaking of polish, another thing that I also changed was the dive move. Before, Goobi did this mid-air tuck, which kind of looks really out of place and weird in my opinion. However, with the help of my friend Rittzler, he helped me set up the state machine, and now his dive looks like this. I think this version looks 10 times better than that cheap version that I made. Now I know I'm probably being really hard on myself, but honestly that's how I feel. I don't think it's good, and I think this version that I have is so much better. The new dive actually makes a lot more sense, because now he's actually rotating with the acceleration. All I'm doing is calculating the acceleration and then rotating the player mesh, giving it the effect that Goobi's diving down. Another thing I also added for polish was add a little wind stream when he dives. I feel like this adds a nice cherry on top of the dive and makes it feel complete. To wrap off some of the movement, the last thing that I did to Goobi was I added this little idle animation for a certain amount of time. When he gets impatient, he'll just play this little animation. And I also think it adds a lot more personality to him. So in Devlog 4, the main collectibles were these basic little stamps, which I actually made a few tweaks to. I made these actual 3D objects, and now they rotate and bob up and down. Now this was all present in the previous devlog, but now it's become a lot more optimized. The stamps before were skeletal meshes, but for those who don't know, skeletal meshes take up a lot of space and can tank performance. So I just replaced them with the static mesh that has no collision. Another thing that I did was I made the coins spin around, which sounds like a basic feature, right? Well, Unreal has this built-in rotating component that isn't extremely performative, and for coins and small things that just need to spin, it's just not needed. I ended up opting for a shader that I made that just gives the illusion that it's rotating. Now, anyone that plays this game is not going to know that I'm using a shader than actually rotating the object, but I thought I'd show off you some optimization tips of things that I'm keeping in mind so you might use in your projects. So if you want my advice, don't use skeletal meshes for coins. They can take up space and tank performance. But now I'm going to contradict myself. The main collectible, aka the big boy or star collectible, are these letters with wings. Now I'm not going to explain why these letters have wings on them because I don't want to spoil anything, but these main collectibles are skeletal meshes and are using a rotating component. So you're probably asking, why am I using things that I just specifically said to avoid? Well, two answers really. Time and lack of knowledge. If I had another day or two to work on this devlog, I probably would have figured out a better solution, but I only recently started to experiment with vertex shaders, so I'm gonna need some time to figure it out. In the future, this is gonna be solved, so, don't really worry about that. Another thing that I also added was that when Goobi picks up a letter, all movement and input is stopped, and he plays this little dance animation. I'll eventually add in some text, some special effects, and a little music chime and more. This is all just a base showcase of things that I've been doing. So now I'm going to move on to the newspaper launcher and just explain how it works. So a common question I saw was, will you need to stand completely still to shoot the newspaper launcher? No. At first I thought this question was a bit odd, because whenever I play the game, I never stop and shoot because it breaks the flow of gameplay. However, looking back on Devlog 4, every time I shot the newspaper launcher and showed it off in the video, I was standing still. So good job on me on that oversight. But now you can run, jump, dive, and shoot. It doesn't really matter. You can shoot it pretty much whenever you want. You don't have to stop. I actually discourage that. I encourage actually running and shooting because it is pretty fun and it does require a bit of skill. Now I do have a plan for auto-targeting or some sort of aim assist to make aiming and shooting a little bit better. Now mechanically, here's how it works. When the player holds down the fire button, the launcher comes out. Then when you release the trigger, it'll fire and then retract. This was the solution that I came up with, and I hope it works, but again, I'm open to anything, so if you guys have any questions or solutions, leave them down in the comments. So yeah, that's pretty much all the stuff I've been working on recently, or at least what I want to show off to you guys, because I want to keep some stuff secret. But if you're going to stick around, I'll explain why my devlogs are so farly spaced apart and just kind of answer some questions that I keep seeing. So first off, I'm a college student, and I recently just started up another year, so it is going to be hard for me to work on the game and be in college at the same time, so it's just time management pretty much. But time management is really important to me, and I feel that I need to focus on school. Of course, it's my main priority, but I also want to work on this game as much as I can. Now you can see that my devlogs are usually spaced about a month apart, sometimes more, and that's because I want to make sure that each devlog is the best it can be. If I don't feel like a devlog is good enough or it doesn't have enough content in it, I'm not going to release it early. And the same goes for Goobi and any future demos that I plan on doing. I always try to strive for perfection, even though I know it's impossible, but I want to make sure that you guys as the audience can get the best video possible, and I don't want to waste your time. So yeah, that's all, and I really do appreciate the amount of support I've been getting lately. I have a ton of plans for future devlogs, and of course I'm going to be all about time management, so definitely subscribe if you haven't already, and I'd love for you guys to join my Discord. So you can get to see some behind the scenes stuff about Goobi and just be part of a really cool game dev community that I'm building. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.